see, right? Karl Marx, right? Any thinker provides his thought not by dreaming. He provides the thought by analyzing the social conditions, the material conditions of the contemporary period. Marx is also product of his own time. Marx is also a product of his own time, and he has given his theory not as a sociologist, not as a political scientist, or as a psychologist, or so to say any other discipline. He was not a disciplinarian in true sense of the term. As usual, Himakshi is always 10 minutes late. Okay, no, not sorry, just joking. Right? So, he did not contribute directly anything as far as the sociology as discipline is concerned. His contribution is in indirect form, but that doesn't mean that his contribution is not relevant for sociology. It is extremely relevant as far as sociology, or so to say any other discipline is concerned, right? But what we want to do here, we want to go a little back to come to the Marxian theory. The first part is, that is, Marx or Marxist theory is product of two important events of 18th century. Two important events of 18th century. One is that is known as Industrial Revolution, and the second that is known as French Revolution, right? So, what we are saying here, if I talk about antecedents, then we can say first is French Revolution and second is Industrial Revolution, right? French Revolution was a political revolution, and Industrial Revolution was an economic revolution, right? What was the impact of French Revolution and Industrial Revolution on the emergence of sociology? That's there in our syllabus, right? So, we have to link it with the impact on emergence of sociology, right? And secondly, what is very important here, that is related with one very important topic in our syllabus, sociology as science, that is known as fact, value and objectivity, right? Means fact value relationship, right? That is further related with a stream that is known as major theoretical strand of sociology, that is positivism and non-positivism, right? Now, as far as this French Revolution is concerned, there is one very important impact of French Revolution, and that is on philosophy of history. Impact of French Revolution on philosophy of history. Philosophy of history. What do you mean by philosophy of history? I'm asking, see, there is a problem with all of us that we don't understand the question first. I'm asking here, what do we mean by philosophy of history? I'm not asking about philosophy of, look at my accent. I'm asking about the meaning of philosophy of history, not philosophy of history. What you are saying is philosophy of history. What I am asking is meaning of philosophy of history. If I ask you, how would you define what is philosophy of history? In general sense, how would you define? Yes, ready? You may make mistake, no problem. We all learn through our mistakes, right? Yes.
How history has been progressing? What are the changes in it?
Philosophy means simply what is the view about history. Philosophy is nothing else but the viewpoint of a person. As far as social sciences are concerned, society is concerned, nothing is absolute right and nothing is absolute wrong. Everything has a reference point, a reference individual, the logic, the reason that a person provides about the reality. So, what's the nature of history? That nature of history is described by different person differently, right? And when it is described by different person differently, means this nature of history is also nothing but the viewpoint, right? Then in an era, what we find, there is an agreement among majority of the such analysts, right? That constitutes the major view of history, or so to say anything in that period, right? So philosophy of history means how the history was viewed by reasonable people, by logical people, and definitely by rational people. And we have a lot of discussion earlier about what do we mean by the rational people, right? So what was the view about French Revolution about history prior to French Revolution, and what was the view of history after the French Revolution? If I say jot down the major features of the French Revolution, or so to say any revolution, what would you say? If I say define or describe about revolution briefly in one sentence or two sentences, what is revolution? Change in existing system. So long back we were primate and today we are human being. So this change from primate to human being is revolutionary change. There must be abrupt change. Accidental mutation is not called revolution. So it is also not very abrupt change. What you are abrupt change in biology, that is called accidental mutation, genetic mutation that gives rise to a new species, and that is by accident very abruptly. Revolution is nothing else but a very rapid change, a change in the overall structure and institution of the society in a relatively very small period. That's a normal definition of revolution. So prior to revolution, what we find, we have certain order of our society. right? And that order has continued for a very long time. That order has continued for a very long time. So, since it is continuing for a very long time, what would appear in your mind about that particular order? Order means social arrangement or type of society. Suppose a certain type of society is continuing for a very long time. What would appear in your mind? My class will be interactive. You can't sit silently. Stable for a very long period. That means we do not even think of that things change. We do not even think of that the things change. Rather, we consider the society as it was before my birth. It will be during my life, and even after my life it will be same. Nothing much will change. More or less it will remain static. This is a normal. When order continues for a very long time, then that is the view that appears in our mind, that this order is stable, static, non-changeable, and it will remain forever. But there is second characteristics of the society that was existing prior to French Revolution. Two important points. One, we were totally dependent on nature, or we didn't have the scientific development or technological marvels. And secondly, our economy was agrarian in nature, feudal agrarian in nature. So two things. One, the main means of production was land. Land is a more or less static phenomena. You can't change the position of the land. It will remain same forever. And always a land-based economy remains static, or the society remains static. And secondly, since we lacked in technological development, so we were dependent on nature. And if we depend on nature, the changes in nature is very slow. The changes in nature is very slow. Means our way of life, our society, its change will also be very slow, and that will appear to be static. So one is reinforcing the other. What I am saying, any order, if it continues for a very long time, it will appear to be static. And this staticness is further reinforced by land-based economy and dependent on nature. Right? So prior to French Revolution, history was considered as static. Prior to French Revolution, history was considered as static. This is static means it implies the changes were so slow that it appeared stable. The changes were so slow that it appeared static or stable, and the reason we have already said, one very important reason is our dependence on nature, and the changes in nature is very slow, and secondly, land-based feudal agrarian economy. Lack of technological development. Are you getting it? Right. What happened during the French Revolution? what was the period of French Revolution? I hope those who are very new, they have also studied history for GS. And when reading world history, you might have come across the French Revolution. So what you find in French Revolution, that somewhere near March 1787, March or April, whatever may be, the revolution began. Before that, the monarch was considered as the absolute authority over the French society as well as the general Western European society. There was no threat to the monarch and his control and his governance over the territory. He was considered as the absolute owner of the land that fell within his controlled territory. But things started changing so rapidly that revolution began in March or April 1787 and it was over by the end of 1789. July 1789, when Louis XVI was beheaded, Declaration of Rights of Man was documented, right? And French society had shook the foundation of the socio-political foundation of the feudal agrarian system and had established the concept of citizenship, the rights of man, what is known as democracy. Short period, 2 years. When something changes so rapidly, then this whole view that history is static is shattered. It appears to be a myth. You are considering things to be static till it started changing. Within a very short span of period, the change was of revolutionary kind, what he was saying, to an extent abrupt, total structural changes in the society, and it completely overthrown the previous order. It overthrew the previous order, and that gives a sense in our mind that history is not static, rather history is dynamic. Right? So what we say, rapidity, you can write rapidity and profundity. Rapidity and profundity of French Revolution, rapidity and profundity of French Revolution changed the philosophy of history, from being static to dynamic. Static to dynamic. Right? That history changes. Now you have come to believe, if you would have been born during that period, after these events you would have come to believe that things does not remain always same, rather it changes. So the society, so the social order. What would the next question that will come in your mind if you are an intellectual? Yes? How does this change occur? And what is the path of the change? Are we moving into particular direction, or we move in a haphazard way? Is there any fixed mechanism that causes the change that will come in the mind of any intellectual. Common man will simply think, things changes. It is not static, it is dynamic. But intellectual people, the social thinker, the philosophers, they will start thinking about the direction, the path of the change, as well as the cause of the change. What causes these changes? Right? So the next question was about the path of the change. Does the change follow a fixed path? Does the change follow a fixed path? Right? Or it is haphazard? Does the change follow a fixed path or it is haphazard? It may move in any direction. There is no fixed rule for it. There is no fixed path for it. There was a philosopher, Fichte, Fichte, Fichte. He said history changes in a haphazard or idiosyncratic manner. History changes in haphazard manner or idiosyncratic manner. idiosyncratic, idiosyncratic manner. It may move in any direction. It may move in any direction means there is no fixed cause. It's very difficult to know the cause of the changes, right? But this Fichte philosophy was criticized by G.W.H. Hegel, right? G.W.H. Hegel. He said history does not progress in haphazard manner, and Hegel is called as the product of French Revolution. Hegel is called as the product of French Revolution. He said history traces a fixed path. History traces a fixed path. It follows certain manner, it follows certain path. When someone says it follows certain manner or certain path, he should also be aware of its cause. Then only he can say that this is correct about history or its path. Right? So what he said, history traces a fixed path, and to explain this he prescribed, advocated a mechanism that is called as dialectical idealism. Dialectical idealism. He advocated a mechanism. What he said, the main cause, the causal principle, the main driver of the history is dialectical idealism. Right? This consists of two words, dialectics and idealism. Dialectics and idealism. Dialectic means conflict of opposites. Dialectic means conflict of opposites. This process of dialectic he advocated not in air. Rather, this is based on certain ancient events. During ancient Rome, people of different faith or two opposite faith, they will collect at an assembly, right? And there will be discussion among them, the verbal duel that would occur. Ancient Rome. From that duel, D-U-E-L, he said dialectic. Right? That conflict of opposite, and what is that opposite? He said by idealism. Dialectical means conflict of opposite. Idealism means primacy of idea. Primacy of idea. Primacy of idea means idea is divine, idea is prime. Idea is divine, idea is prime. Means idea comes in our mind from heaven. Heaven means nobody knows. A person is born with an idea. The idea is quite pure to a person. Are we getting it? Right? So he says the idea comes first, and that idea has impact on other developments. To be very simple, an idea is stuck in my mind that I can create a fan. Then I started making electricity. Then I started making motor and so on, the blade, the steel, etc. The idea of fan came first in my mind, and once this idea came, I started molding my idea into reality. This is called primacy of idea. Now this is not also absolute, rather this primacy of idea he owes to 18th century philosopher Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant, right? So first, in this context, this primacy of idea owes to the idea that primacy of idea exists by Hegel, owes to the Kantian idealism. Immanuel Kant, the most prominent philosopher of 18th century, who had written a book called Critique of Pure Reason in 1757. Are we getting it? Right. What he says, conflict of ideas keep on taking place. Conflict of ideas keep on taking place. You can understand it in somewhat different way. All of us, we face a situation at one point of time or the other, or we can say it is more persistence than the clarification in our own mind. We come to situations regularly which is popularly known as catch-22 situation. Whether I should do this or I should do that. If you try to create an abstract categories of those situations in our mind or idea in our mind, then we can classify them into two opposite ideas. I should prepare for civil services, or I should not prepare for civil services. We never come with the idea that I should partially prepare for civil services and partially for other exams. The dilemma is always in a dichotomous form. I should do this or I should not do this. Once you decide I should not prepare for civil services, then you come across certain other issues. I should go for banking or I should not go for banking. And finally, with these conflict of opposite ideas, the dilemmas in mind, we come to say, okay, all is not my cup of tea, so let me open a shop and become a businessman. Then you decide, After that again the conflict might be coming in our mind. Similarly, in a society there are many people, thousands. Nowadays 1000 is a very small word, so millions is the normal word, right? So millions. Out of those millions, 1,250,000 people have one idea, and 750,000 people have an idea opposite to what 250,000 people have. This is called dialectic of ideas in a society. Dialectic of ideas in a society. Within a society, there exists a conflict of ideas, and these ideas are opposite to each other. These ideas are opposite to each other. This is what it is talking about, dialectical idealism. So, this dialectical idealism has been explained by Hegel by saying, at a particular instant of history, I know for some it is repetition, but at least it is recapitulation, right? At certain point of history, there exists an idea in a society which is true, and is called thesis, right? At a particular instant of history, though I am freezing the history is always dynamic, but philosophers have always adopted a method, logically exaggerating the situation towards one extreme end. Philosophers adopt a methodology. The methodology is logically exaggerating a situation towards an extreme end. If I say Aristotle had said women completely lack creative capacity. Wasn't that a logical exaggeration, a hypothetically exaggerated stand? All philosophers have the tendency to exaggerate their viewpoint towards certain extreme end. We are hypothesizing that extreme condition and freezing the history. We are stopping the time itself, which is not possible. So, hypothetically freezing the history or the time. At a particular instant of history, there exists an idea, and there is nothing wrong about that. That is true, and this is called thesis. Are you getting it? So, thesis. In time, opposite of it develops. In time, opposite of it develops. Means the opposite idea develops. And that is also true. There is nothing wrong with it. Wearing salwar kurta is correct, or wearing jeans is right. Both are right. Not wearing cloth at all is right or not. It is wrong for few, it is right for few. If you go to Denmark and Scandinavian countries, there are beaches which are called as nude beaches, and wearing clothes on those beaches are considered against the manner. You will be called as mannerless. As a philosopher, I am also taking an extreme, highly exaggerated example. For them, it is absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with it. That is true. That is true. But what do you get the idea that this is true for Scandinavians only? Means some people in this universe or on this earth consider that idea as correct, true. Means idea is true or false, right or wrong, that exists in the mind of the people. It's the belief of a person. If in a society majority consider one idea as right and a minority consider opposite idea as right, then conflict exists, and overall it appears in the society that what is the standpoint of the majority, that is correct, that is the only truth. Right? So in time, opposite of that idea develops. There is nothing wrong with that. That is also correct. That is also true, and that he calls as antithesis. Antithesis. Right? Then in this class, if 50 seats are there, chairs are there, 50 people are sitting, and if I ask you at what time we should have our class, some people will say, sir, morning 8 to 10 will be fine, and some people will say evening 8 to 10 will be fine. Ladai hogi. If I give you power to decide, right, conflict is very natural, right? But this conflict does not mean the end of the class. You all want to have class. So gradually you will come to a compromise situation. You will say, okay sir, not 8 to 10, not morning, not 8 to 10 evening, let us have from 2 to 4 p.m. every day. A compromise is reached. 2 to 4 is the ideal time for conducting sociology classes in old Rajendra Nagar. What is wrong with that? That is also true. That is also true. This is called synthesis, a compromise. This synthesis is a new thesis, which is also correct. This synthesis 2 to 4 p.m. is also correct. Then some night owls will come. Sir, it's not 2 to 4 p.m. Rather, it's better to have our classes at 2 to 4 a.m. That may also occur. There is nothing wrong with that also. We'll say in the night the situations remains quite cool and calm, right? There is no destruction, so we can concentrate more on our studies and so on. 2 to 4 p.m. people will say, actually night is meant to sleep, day is meant to work, so during night we should sleep, during day we should study or work. Both are correct. There is nothing wrong with that. Then we'll somehow come to a compromise situation. Okay, let us do 5 to 7. 1 hour evening, 1 hour night. Something like this. right? So this new thesis, again antithesis will appear, compromise will occur, synthesis, and the process will go on. And the process will go on. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This synthesis is the new thesis. Opposite of that is antithesis. Again compromise will occur, synthesis. That will be a new thesis, and this process will continue. But this whole dialectic is that of ideas. This whole dialectic is that of ideas, and as the ideas come to exist, if we start believing that 2 to 4 am is the ideal time and we start conducting our classes, we'll have to do proper arrangement of lightings, transportations and many other things. So accordingly things will have to change. So change in idea will give rise to the change in the material reality. That's what Hegel believed. That's what Hegel believed. Then in between there was another philosopher who is known by the name of Feuerbach. 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 Right? He wrote a book called Essence of Christianity. Essence of Christianity. Right? This book contains the viewpoint of Feuerbach on Christianity in particular and religion in general. Now when I am making a final statement, those are the statements that is to be written in your answer. There are two parts of the lecture. One is explanation and second part, abstract statements I will be making. Those abstract statements you should try to use. Right? So Feuerbach book Essence of Christianity contains the description of the gist of Christianity in particular and religion in general. You want to write? Write down. Feuerbach's book contains the description of gist, G-I-E-S-T, gist of Christianity. Gist means essence. Christianity in particular and religion in general. Christianity in particular and religion in general. What is the essence? What's the purpose? What's the gist of Christianity? And he says the essence of Christianity is that it exists because people are divided against each other. There are Muslims, Jews, that's why there are Christians. So Christians are doing nothing else but the opposing the group of Jews, the group of Muslims and so on, particularly Jews. In Europe, Jews, Islam reached quite late in Europe. So what he said, religion exists till group of men are divided against group of men. Religion exists, religion or God. God. Religion or God exists till group of men are divided in conflict with group of men. Right? You find the resemble of this theory even in our contemporary period. When politicians use religion and religious symbol to mobilize people, what they do? They try to polarize the society and garner the votes. Right? So that particular happenings is resembling, getting reflection in this theory. So religion originated, God exists, sacred symbols exist, because we need to achieve solidarity. And why do we need to achieve solidarity? Because we are conflict with some other group of people. Right? It means people are divided. Now the issue is why they are divided. Why are they divided? Why one group of men is in conflict with the other group of men? Clash of ideas, but Feuerbach does not accept that. He says because of a scarcity of resources. He says this is because of a scarcity of resources. Resources are less and people are more, consumers are more. If there is 25 Rasagolla in this class and 50 people are sitting, class is inevitable. Is the reality of Rasgulla, nowadays there is debate going on whether Rasagolla originated in Bengal or Odisha. Right? So Odisha has recently, they have claimed it was something like Jagannath Bhagwan and all those things that gave rise to Rasagolla. Then immediately Mamata Banerjee came in action. She formed a commission to describe about the history, trace its origin and all those things. And the Odisha and Bengal are in conflict with each other on the issue of Rasagolla. So conflict is inevitable. We know 20 people could consume. So 25 people, to fight the other 25, they need to form a group. This is scarcity of resources, what is known as material reality. Material reality means this idea of God and religion owes to the resource crunch, the existing material condition. If there is things in abundance in this universe or on this earth that we all human beings need, there will never be a class and we don't need God. That's what Feuerbach had to say. So what he says, divine is the illusory product of reality. Divine is the illusory product of reality. Divine is the illusory product of reality. Divine is nothing but the idea of God. God exists. This is an idea. God does not exist. This is also an idea. Does God exist? Does God exist? What's your name? Rohit. So Rohit, does God exist? You believe it exists. So can you one day let me meet him or her? You believe. You cannot verify. Anybody who believes God does not exist? Right now you all are preparing for civil services, so you all are scared a little bit. That if I say something about the existence of God, then I might not clear the prelims itself. So let us not doubt about the existence of God. Let us not doubt about the existence of God. Right? So God is an idea. Whether God exists, that is an idea. Whether God does not exist, that is an idea. And this idea is because we have 1,300 seats for 6 lakh people. Scarcity of resources. So divine is the illusory product of material reality. Existing reality. Right? When Karl Marx read Feuerbach during his youthful days, Marx was also a strong follower of Hegel. That's what you will come across the book as a young Hegelian. At that time, it was a fashion among the intellectuals, academics, to follow Hegel, because Hegel appeared to be highly convincing during that period. Hegel appeared to be highly convincing in that period for a large number of academics, a large number of intellectuals. Marx was also an intellectual. He started writing in 1844, he was born in 1818. So at the age of 26 years, he started writing, and many things he has written at that time. The most important of his theory, that is alienation, right? And also he has written on the Jewish question about Jews in 1844. We'll come to that, why and how he has written that, right? When Marx read this, he found fault in Hegelian primacy of idea, and he said, I found Hegel standing on his head. I found Hegel standing on his head. I turned him and set him to stand on his feet. Means, what he is saying, there are two things that we are talking about and their primacy. One is idea, another is material reality. Hegel is saying idea first. Feuerbach is saying this is first. Before Feuerbach or reading Feuerbach, Marx had told the line of Hegel, and he believed that idea is first. But once he read Feuerbach, he said, I found Hegel standing on his head, means upside down, right? I turned him and made him set on his feet firmly. That is Now, this he turned materiality over and idea lower. Reality is first, idea is secondary. So, juxtaposing, write down, juxtaposing Hegel and Feuerbach, juxtaposing Hegel and Feuerbach, Marx put forward his, within inverted comma, material conception of history. Material conception of history, inverted comma close, that is, history is nothing but progress or change in the material conditions. With the change in material condition, ideas prevalent in society changes correspondingly. Ideas prevalent in society changes correspondingly. Right? Are you getting it? He had never himself used the term historical materialism, dialectical materialism and historical materialism and dialectical materialism. Marx himself has never used the term dialectical materialism or historical materialism. These are the two parts of this theory that is known as material conception of history. How history changes? History changes with the change in the material condition. With the change in material conditions, the ideas changes. With the change in material conditions, the ideas changes. Right? And this way society changes. So his theory, material conception of history, it has two dimensions. One is historical materialism. Historical materialism in changes in history is the change of the material conditions. Changes in history is the change in material conditions of society. Changes in history is the change in material conditions of society. The second part is dialectical materialism. What he says? It is the material conditions that are in dialectical relationship. Material conditions are in dialectical relationship. Dialectical relationship. Right? Actually, both Hegel and Marx are trying to answer a simple question. What is that? Chicken first or egg? अंडा पहले या मुर्गी? कौन पहले? What's your name? Niyati. Oh, very good name. तो नियति अंडा पहले और मुर्गी पहले. And that's what they are also debating and still not found. So all these debates of these thinkers, sociologists and all those philosophers so called are nothing else but debate. And one thing you will find that no philosopher has ever solved a question. No philosopher has ever solved a question. Right? Means, if you have a problem, if you go to a philosopher, they have all the logic reason, but they will not be able to solve your problem, because the moment they explain your problem in certain way, another philosopher and his viewpoint will be standing opposed to the other one. But one contribution of philosopher is it destabilizes the established convention. If somebody says egg first, and for a long time people have been believing that it was egg that came first. So one philosopher one day, he will give his logic, and that will put in your mind a doubt about that primacy of egg. And once that seed of doubt is sowed in the mind of the people in a society, that feeling will never remain same. So they question the established convention. Once they question a convention, the convention does not have that much say as it existed before. These people are also trying to do the same thing. Right? So this is what we are finding, that these philosophers are trying to answer the question which in the ultimate analysis is non-solvable, but still we take the point of view of one or the other. So are you getting dialectical materialism, historical materialism, or material conception of history? That is by Karl Marx. Right? When Karl Marx explains this, when you see his theory, then what you find, that he talks about changes in society from primitive communism to ancient society to feudal society to capitalist society. Right? He explains the materials of historical materials of Europe. And when he analyzes the historical materials of Europe, then he finds Europe has moved through 4 stages: primitive communism, ancient society, feudal society, and his contemporary period, that is known as capitalist society. Capitalist mode of production. Right? So he has reached, by explaining the historical materials of Europe, from primitive communism, the detail we will be seeing what he wants to say or what he is saying, to capitalism. His main purpose was description of capitalist mode of production. His main purpose was to look at the exploitive tendency of the capitalist mode of production, the pathetic situation of the working class proletariat. And in this pursuance, he analyzes that ultimately this capitalism has to die, and it will give way for socialism and finally communism. So generally it is said that Karl Marx was concerned about the exploitation of labor class during capitalist mode of production. And he wanted to emancipate the proletariat class or human being as a whole. Write down. The popular explanation of Marxian concern is that he wanted emancipation of proletariat class, the highly exploited people in the capitalist mode of production, living in abject poverty and pathetic condition. Abject poverty and pathetic condition. So what we are considering here, we are trying to analyze, and what we had said, fact value relationship, I want to come to that Marx's main concern was emancipation of the working class, the proletariat class, who were exploited at the hands of the capitalists. Right? Now I want to go or ask question, was it the real purpose behind Marxist thought? The concern for the proletariat class, was it the real concern of Marx behind all of his thoughts or his thinking? Right? In sociology, any explanation according to Weber, or so to say any theory, merely speaks about probability. So what Marx said is a probability. What we are going to say now or criticize, that probability is also a probability. When you read Max Weber, he says, theory in sociology is chance, not concrete. What does it mean? Newton's third law of action says, every action has equal and opposite reaction, and that will happen. That will happen for sure. But if I slap you, will you slap me back? Why? And if your friend slaps you, then? It means, as far as we human beings are concerned, every action does not have equal and opposite reaction. You may say, sir, थोड़ा और मारिए मुझे, ताकि मैं ठीक से पढ़ूं, कम से कम सिविल सर्वेंट तो बन जाऊं. मार तो गुरु का आशीर्वाद है. We keep on saying something like that. But that is not for our friend. How dare you slap me? So something like, if it is very close friend, then whenever he loves me too much, he slaps me. Yes, it happens. I have seen Youth. I was also once youth. Now many of the things I have forgotten, but when I move in metro, then I see the behavior of youth. They keep on doing something like that. Means every action has not equal and opposite reaction. That is also a probability. So what I am going to say is a probability. What Marx says, I am assuming it to be a probability from Weberian perspective. We can't say it in absolute manner. What we are saying, from referring to the viewpoint of a particular individual. Right. Who was Marx? If I ask a question, what would you answer? German and Jew. Is it relevant to speak about Jewism or Jew in sociology classes when we are reading Marx? He was a thinker. So Jewism doesn't have any concern about that. Whether he was Jew or Christian, it doesn't matter. Are you sure? Whether Marx was a Jew or a Christian is immaterial as far as his thoughts are concerned. That's what I am asking. Marx was a Jew. Is it relevant or not relevant? According to Niyati, it is not relevant. Right? Is it relevant whether he is Jew or not? Not correctly. Means it is irrelevant. Okay. Means Marxian social background, that he was a Jew, is irrelevant as far as sociology is concerned, as far as his explanation of the contemporary capitalist society of Europe is concerned. Right? Let us see whether it was there or not. I am believing that his Jewish background has to do a lot with his thoughts, and I am providing logic in support of that. When you get a question, critically analyze. You have to, what is the meaning of critically analyze? You have to support as well as criticize. It means you have to give the logic in support as well as give the logic in opposition to that. For and against. Here also we are doing the same thing. You may have an idea that supports that Jewish background of Marx has nothing to do with his thoughts. I am trying to see a logic that supports the view that Jewish background of Marx has a lot to do with his thoughts. Right? What was the problem that Jews faced in the history of mankind? Fighting for a nation. Right? That is Second World War. That was more appropriate for the Second World War. What else the problem they have faced? They have been thought as backstabbers, right? Jews suffer from a particular problem, and that problem is known as anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism that goes back to religion called Semitic religion, non-Semitic religion, right? Jewish religion is known as Semitic religion. the feeling antagonism against the Jews is known as anti-Semitism. Means Jews throughout the Christian period, Jews have suffered from religious persecution at the hands of Christians. Throughout the Christian period, Jews have suffered religious persecution at the hands of Christians. Right? Means they have been persecuted for their faith, for their belief. And the reason is Jews are considered as the killer of the God of, the prophet of Christians, Jesus. One who kills my God. And in the future, if I am able to garner such a large following, all those who are Christians, they have belief, they have faith in Jesus as prophet of God, and they have also a belief that Jews killed Jesus. We cannot expect sympathy from Christians towards Jews. Particularly if we are living in an era that is characterized by theology. Reason is very important. So throughout the history of Christianity or Christian era, Jews suffered from the religious persecution, right? Now this religious persecution heightens at the time of political and economic instability or crisis. You can understand this from certain other example. What is communalism? That is called fundamentalism. That is called politics is communalized. What is communalism? That is called communalism. That is called communal polity. Communalization of politics. Antagonistic. Communalism is a stage in society that talk about the feeling of antagonism among the religious groups. In India, there is one religion Hindu, there is another religion Muslim, and other religions are also there. Hindu feel an antagonism towards Muslim, and Muslim feel an antagonism towards Hindus. Look at the word that I am saying, feeling. What I have said, feeling. But this feeling does not mean we are killing each other. There is enmity among us, antagonism among us. But when we meet, और अरशद कैसे हो, और प्रवीण कैसे हो, and the moment you move, मुस्लिम है बच के रहना, हिंदू है काफिर है. Are you getting this? Such type of, we all do that. We will not accept, but we do that. Right? This feeling, antagonism along the religious line that exists in our mind, that is called communalism. when this communalism gets action, that is known as communal riots. Means riots are the active phase of communalism. Did you know before that? Difference between communalism and communal riots? You have tried to know such things that we generally use in our common language, but we don't know the exact difference between them. The moment you start clarifying the differences, such description, half of the battle is won. Right? In the same way, anti-Semitism is also a feeling against Judaism, Jaivism. In the same way as communalism is prevailing in India, the Hindu-Muslim antagonism is prevailing in India for almost last 300-400 years. But every day, do we suffer from riots? We don't suffer from riots every day. When does riot occur? Just before the election. What does that mean? See, this feeling of antagonism is a highly emotional issue. Feeling of antagonism is a highly emotional issue. Emotion lacks rationality. Emotion lacks rationality. Suppose you have been to your college and every day you come back your home at 4 o'clock. One day you didn't come by 6 o'clock. What kind of feeling that goes on in the mind of your mother? Has he met an accident? Has he been abducted by somebody? Certain untoward events have occurred. Those things come in your mind. But suppose I am sitting there and I say, it seems he has met an accident. What will be the reaction of the mother? बेवकूफ जब भी बोलेगा उल्टा ही बोलेगा, नहीं? शुभ बोल, and something like that. The feeling that is going on within her own mind, if someone else expresses, she feels antagonistic. Isn't it not reasonable? So emotion lacks rationality. Right? So whenever election comes, politicians find this emotional issue quite handy for polarizing the society and garnering the vote. Right? And I give you an example of 2014 parliamentary election. Did you ever hear Narendra Modi talking about religion throughout his election campaign? टीवी पे डिबेट देखते हो ना? डू यू वॉच टीवी? नो. राइट. न्यूज़पेपर तो पढ़ते हो. In those newspaper there is description about what are the speeches that goes on, and we found that he hardly spoke about that, though he has a background of religion. And whenever Congress people came, you talk about coal, they will talk about communalism. You talk about CWZ, they will talk about communalism. All the secular forces should come together against the communal forces and fascist forces of BJP. Actually, they did not have the courage or the issue with them of development. They were marred with corruption. Now, I am not going into the detail whether really they did have the issue of development or not. What I am saying a different thing. Whenever you suffer from such type of credibility crisis, you try to deviate the mind of the people from a real issue towards emotional issue. Later on we will be seeing what are the reasons for the communalization of Indian society. The detail we will further see. But here what we find, that whenever Europe faced economic or political crisis of one form or the other, the political leadership, they tried to deviate the mind of the people from the real empirical issue towards emotional issue, that is feeling against Jews. As we find, people accused of BJP fanning rats just before the election, sometimes also known as Muzaffarnagar plan or Bulandshahr plan. This was being done even during the history of Christian Europe. Hitler would say that was a period when plague was quite rampant. Plague, disease. Plague is spreading because Jews are there. So he said, for all our problem, Jews are responsible. So there is only one and final solution. He talked about final solution, complete elimination of the Jewish community. And we all know how many millions of Jews were killed, tortured in the concentration camps, burnt alive, right, during that period. Marx, being a Jew, can share the pain of the Jews. And being a Jew, what he would like? This persecution of Jews ends. That's a very natural feeling. That's my explanation. That's not only my explanation, it's also reflected in Marx's writing, that is known as the article on Jewish community. In 1844. In 1844, he wrote that article on Jewish community. From that, I am interpreting that Marx's prime concern was emancipation of Jews. It was not an attempt to analyze the society in quite objective way, in a neutral way. Rather, he was concerned about the plight of his own community. As I have said, I will always make references of the book from which I have read, Sociology of ethnicity by Sinisa Malazevic. Right? Don't try to read the book. But for authentication, I am saying. The name of the book is Sociology of Ethnicity, written by Sinisa Malazevic. It may have, naturally, Marx has himself written on Jewish question. So, if you read directly Jewish question, you don't need to read this. Right? But what you find here, Christians were in majority in Europe and Jews were in minority. Christians in majority, Jews in minority. Right? And what is the period we are talking about? We are talking about the period that is 1844 around. 19th century Europe, Germany was not secular, not democratic as it exists today. Democracy was there. We'll further come to know about what type of democracy existed at that time. But definitely the kind of democracy that is present today in Europe and the kind of democracy that was present in Europe during that period, at least there was difference of degree. In fact, democratic norms became more established only after 1945 when UDHR came into existence. United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. One of the reasons for this document is to end the war crimes, and war crimes mainly refer to the persecution of Jews. Right? So, after that, the way the whole of the world under the leadership of America had changed. Before that, the situation was not that way. Right? So, in the beginning of 19th century, if a thinker or philosopher or activist, if he talks only about emancipation of a minority community, whereas the politics is dominated by the majority community, the ruling class constitutes mainly the majority community, that is Christians, and the persecuted class or the religious group is Jews. So, if a person takes up that issue, in democracy, rule of majority prevails. Today, it has changed after the establishment of UDHR, human rights, globalization of the world, etc., etc. Whether minority rights, minority has the right to live, maintain their culture, their belief, faith under UDHR. Earlier, those things were not in the form of a written document. That means, if Marx would have talked about only Jews, he would have found very few takers in the European political domain. So he says, Jewish emancipation is not possible without human emancipation. Jewish emancipation is not possible without human emancipation. Behind the scene was the thought that was going on, and that too in a probabilistic thought I am saying. What was going inside Marx, nobody will know ever. So I am just trying to guess, I am trying to interpret that these thoughts might be going in the mind of Marx, which he can never speak outrightly. Otherwise, the moment he says, because of Jews I am saying something like this, all of his theory will be forfeited. Its purpose will be forfeited. Right? So he wanted the emancipation of Jews, which he felt, if I talk about that in the present socio-economic and political situation, cannot be taken properly in the stride by the Christians. So let me talk about whole of the human being. Right? So Jewish emancipation is not possible without human emancipation. What do you mean by human emancipation? Human emancipation means the whole of the human being. Every human being should be emancipated. How would you define, as a student of sociology, human emancipation? Caste is a social evil? Caste is a social evil or casteism is a social evil? Okay. Life? Higher life chances. Higher life chances is human emancipation. Do you agree? So you have 2-ton air conditioner in a small room of 8 by 8, or you have more money. Many? Making human free from bondages. You know, there are 2 types of theories. One theory says that some human beings are bondaged by some people. There is another theory which says those who are bonded themselves submit their freedom. I have bondaged you to stay here for 2 hours. Even though university says a man cannot concentrate, a student cannot concentrate for more than 40 minutes. I have been taking the class for 2 hours and sometimes I will be taking the class for 4 hours. Will you attend the class or not? No. People say, sir, take 5 hours of classes. Even if they don't understand anything, they want to finish the course. मैं थक जाता हूँ, ये गला खराब हो जाता है. Right? It means you have पैसा भी दिए, 33,000, those who have paid and those who are going to pay. And then you are enslaved of my timetable, and that you are doing willingly. So bondedness is not always forced. Sometimes it is willing submission of the people, because you have a goal that you can achieve only through this method. So in ancient period, slaves submitted their freedom to their masters, because masters provided them with assured food and work. Generally, people faced with the situation of hunger and other things constantly, they submitted to a person who was able to assure you the food. So normally bondedness, freedom from bondedness, that can be called as emancipatory by us, but sociologically we need to define it in a more neutral way. Sociologically we need to define it in a more neutral way. Okay, forget about the definition of human emancipation. What is required to describe human emancipation? Look at the word itself. Human emancipation. What do you... Greatest happiness. Happiness is highly subjective. No, forget about that. Just look at these two words. Human emancipation. Right? What do we need to understand, to explain, if we want to know what is emancipatory for us? What framework? अरे यही दो वर्ड देखो ना. Don't look beyond that. What's your name? Kanishk. Kanishk, which era? Susan. Right. Anyway. So, Kanishk, what do we need to know to define human emancipation? Oh, yes, that is definitely there. Emancipatory is subjective. Now, don't look beyond these two words. What I am saying, to define this, what do we need to know?
What a person needs.
What is human being? First, you need to know what is human being. Who are we? What is our nature? So it's not freedom from bondedness, is the sociological description of human emancipation. Sociologically speaking, realizing our true nature will be emancipatory for us. If I have a particular nature, I feel happiness in that, and I am not working, I am not realizing that happiness. What makes me happy is beyond my achievement, is beyond my reach. What makes you happy?
Fulfillment of my
So what is that?
There can be many
Like?
small things. If I want to go to a movie, it can.
So you feel happy for a very small period. No, I want you to make happy forever. Nobody is happy forever. Who is the culprit? Person himself. Marx does not believe in that. Desires. Can this society continue or the world continue without our desires? I am asking what is human, you are saying human behavior. I am asking what is the game of chess, you are saying chess playing, sir. Don't explain a word by the same word. Try to decipher it further. So who are we? What is our nature? If we are able to realize the essence of being a human, it will be emancipatory for us. If I like to be in bondedness, like many people are highly family oriented. They know if my parents come, I will not be able to do party after 9 o'clock. Or maybe if my parents are ailing, I will never be able to do party. Me and my wife cannot move together because my mother is staying with me and one has to always stay with her. Whether I am happy or not. Whereas normally speaking, husband and wife will like to move at least once in a week, go together for shopping or anything else. So, by not able to go together, am I feeling sad or am I feeling happy? What I want to say here, that we first need to define what is the nature, the essence of the human being. The first and foremost task of a sociologist to describe the characteristic feature of being human. Salman Khan's NGO. Being human. Do you wear that t-shirt? How much it costs? 2000. और रोड पर 100 रुपया. Piracy. Piracy or piracy? Piracy. Every generation the accent changes, pronunciation changes. Right. So many times we will be finding difficulty while communicating with each other. In writing also. Achha. Right. So what we are saying here, the first and foremost task for us is to know who are we, what is the characteristic feature of human being, what can bring happiness in human being, what is the purpose of being human, what is the essence, the gist of being human. And for that, you come tomorrow and try to say me. You go home today, it's 4 o'clock near about, right? You go home today and think, who are we? And let me see, what are you going to get? The answer from your side. And then your thinking, I will try to create in abstract classification. I am not going to do beyond your thinking. I will impress on you to think first. Then you come with certain logic, reasoning, something right, something wrong. just call one person. Ankit is there. Ankit Agarwal, just call him. You are going to meet a person who has got 294 out of 500 this year in sociology. Ankit, एक minute. So this is the person, Ankit Agarwal. I just saw you, so I called you to say that he is the second highest in socio till noon. 306 was the highest of 7th ranker, and he has got 294. मेरे हैं नहीं यार, मेरे 10% है, 90% तुम्हारे. चलो 2 मिनट में आ गया. थैंक यू. I just saw his face, that's why I called him. Right. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to think. Right? You need to think. You think. I will try to articulate your thoughts into proper sociological view, and that way you will be able to retain more. Right? Tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So a few words from Ankit, and you can talk to him, right? Thank you.
So, how are you liking sociology? How is this comfortable to you or not? How many of you are giving mains for the first time? See, and others? अभी मतलब पीटी फर्स्ट टाइम दिया आप लोगों ने? सभी ने या पहले दे चुके हैं कोई मेंस? फर्स्ट टाइम है. नाइस है, नाइस. Look, in UPSC, as